So what's wrong with us? Why can't we seem to come together? What's wrong with us as a people? Right? That's what I want to talk about right now. See, we have no instruction other than the free fall of instructions that are set out for man within the tenets of perdition. Therefore, we lack leadership. People have set out to establish their own understanding and righteousness. And they've rebelled against the long standing antiquity of what's written. So I would like to speak to you from the antiquity of a book called the Bible. Now, I know for a number of you, that was a trigger. Said the Bible, oh, that book was written by man. It was written by the white man. It's like, okay, so what do we have out here today that's not written by man? The beautiful thing about the Bible is it was never intended to be for religion. It's always been a book about the heritage of a people. And the other thing is it's written. I love what's written because you can stand on what's written. The other stuff, it's obviously made up, in the heads of different individuals based on what they think. And you got folks that say, you don't need a book. We don't need a book to be righteous. We don't need a book to be next to God. See, that's not written. If we're dealing with the antiquity of what's written, the thing saying we don't need a book, that's made up. That's people going about their own understanding and their own righteousness. So let's jump into it so we can find out what's wrong with us. We're going to start out with Isaiah 30:8. He says, now go and write it before them in a table and note it in a book that they may be for the time, that it may be for the time to come, forever and ever. So the book is forever. And what's written, what we're talking about, the antiquity of what's written, it's forever. So for those folks that are saying we don't need a book, should you listen to that? They're speaking from the ignorance of their limited perception, mind, understanding, education, indoctrination. But here we're talking about something that was written and meant to stand and or transcend time forever. Baruch 4:1. This is the book of the commandments of God and the law that endure forever. See, we have to understand what's written. It's amazing, you all, that here in America, they have over 30 some odd thousand different laws, and you adhere to those things. You can acknowledge that as it's written. You don't go and say, oh, we don't need the laws. We don't need what's written. We can just, it's just in me. I just know it. No, you have to adhere to what's written. But the difference with respect to what I'm pointing out as far as in the book and it being of someone's heritage, this is forever. That's the difference. The religion, it's made up. But as it pertains to our heritage, we must deal with the law that endure forever. He says, all they that keep it shall come to life. So when we look at what's written from the standpoint of what's in this book called the Bible, and we deal with it from the moral compass, from the dietary compass, from customs and traditions, right? When we look at it for the tenets upon which it was established, based on the heritage for the people it was intended for, we will come to life. But we're dead right now because we're following the ways of America. We're following their laws, and we know nothing about the law that endure forever as it pertains to our heritage specifically. All they that keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die. And that's what's happened to us. We're dead with our eyes open. We're the walking dead. We have no life, in us because we don't understand what's written. And we've walked away from our heritage. We were stripped, of our history. We don't know our name as we call ourselves Black, African American, Negro, colored, you name it. We've forgotten that we are the children of Israel. We've forgotten, that we are the children of God. So it's time that we make the kingdom of Israel great again, right? So he says, when you talk about the law, he says, all they that keep them shall come to life. And he said, the law endure forever. So Deuteronomy 4:6, he says, keep therefore and do them. He's talking about the statutes, the commandments, the judgments. The judgments, like, if somebody go off track, we have a way to judge them. No different than as you're dealing with this law of America or the American law. You go to court, you get sentenced. That's the judgment. Well, in the book called the Bible, there are judgments for the people of the book. We've just forgotten it. We've walked away from it. He says, though, remember, if you keep it, you're going to live. If you walk away from it, you're going to die. And this is why we suffer. And this is why we can't come together. In short, that's what's wrong with us. Not about religion, but about our heritage, our name, our history. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom. See, this is what's written. I'm not making this up out of my head and just telling you what I think or what I feel. He says, keep therefore and do them, talking about the statutes, talking about the judgments. He says, for this is your wisdom, talking to the children of God. If you're not the children of God, this is not for you. This is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. So when it comes to all the other people, even America, our wisdom and understanding is not their way of life. And when we understand that and come back to the heritage or the law of life that God gave us, then we can live. Otherwise, we're going to continue to be dominated and die in this land. So our wisdom and understanding in the sight of the nations are the statutes and judgments that God gave us to live by for the heritage. But we've abandoned that to walk by the ways of the Americans. As some people out here saying they want to make America great again. To hell with making the kingdom of Israel great again, right? The concept of making America great again, where is that written? See, that's people going about to establish, their own righteousness, going about within their own understanding. It's vain deceit. It's something that's not going to stand. It has nothing to do with the will and or the way of God, except to be made an example when God comes and destroys it, according to prophecy, right? He says, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of all nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. Y'all, if we want to come to life, if we want to be great, we have to come back to what's written. Not make it up out of our head. And he said, we would be great and seen as wise and understanding before all the other nations if we keep, therefore, and do them as it pertains to his statutes, the law that he said endure forever. Anybody that says that it doesn't, they're not of God. They have dealt with, or they are dealing with their own understanding and their own righteousness. Right? Number 7, he says, for what nation is there so great? There's no nation greater than the kingdom of Israel and the children of God, the chosen people that God have set aside to be different. And we are of that chosen people, y'all. We've just forgotten. And don't wait for them to tell you that you're more than black. Don't wait for them to tell you that you're of the kingdom of Israel. Don't wait for them to tell you that you're not of the seed of Ishmael, that you're not a Muslim, or you're not an Arab. Don't wait for them to tell you, that you're more than any other people on the planet, that you are of the children of God, those that he chose to set above all the nations on the earth, that you're of the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You're of the 12 tribes. But we're here in the land of our captivity, just, in derision, confused, trying to figure it all out. Right? He says, for what nation is there so great, but without our law, without our heritage, without our history, understanding who we are, that we can function within the capacity of our traditions and heritage, we're fallen. We're being dominated. We're dead. For what nation is there so great, who have God so nigh unto them? This is key, because you got folks out here talking and those trying to teach that, God just loves everybody, but God, with respect to what's written, is expressing he's close to a peculiar people. So he says, who have God so nigh unto them? As the Lord our God. That's possessive. Doesn't talk about the Lord their God. He's the Lord our God. Right? As the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for. Number 8, he says, and what nation is there so great that have statutes and judgments? America does not carry the statutes and judgments of God. That's why it's a big failure. Right? He says, and what nation is there so great that have statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law? And you have within the Christian community, they do their best to get rid of the law. But God says, who has statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law? Why would you want to get rid of that and tell people you can't do it? It's done away with. Stop the lies. This is what's wrong with us. This is why we can't come together, because we're following the standards and the laws of America, and we've abandoned the statutes and the judgments, the laws that God have given us to live by as it is written. So you must know, if you abandon the laws of God, then you're going to live by the laws of men. I don't hear you all talking about the laws of America are done away with, and there's no need for us to follow that. We could just say the name of Jesus and, we could live in America. No, you follow these laws these white men have put up before us in America, or you're going to go to jail. You fear man more than you fear God. And you've allowed the indoctrination of men to overshadow what is written. And what nation is there so great that have statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I have set before you this day? Talking about the children of Israel, talking about the children of God, talking to us, right? So according to 1 Corinthians 1:10, because asking the question, what's wrong with us and why we can't come together? In 1 Corinthians 1:10, it explains we must speak the same thing. And we have an issue with doing that because you got some folks saying you don't need the book. But our answers are in the book because it's giving us the standard. It's giving us the principles. It's giving us the morality for which we should be judged, for which we should be held accountable. But you got folks, because I get it, the religion have made so many feel, as if the Bible is illegitimate. But no, you have to understand the intent and the purpose of the book and what's written in there. It was never meant to be used for their religion. So, coming back to it, knowing that this is our lifeline and our heritage, we must all speak the same thing. He says there can be no division among us. And that's where we suffer, because we can't come together because, just off the jump, there's all this division. And the moment you say, hey, this is the law of God, you got somebody else saying, I don't need that book and I want to do it this way. And then so many of us are so corrupt. We don't want to be held accountable to our corruption. But there can be no division among us. And we and we should be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment, meaning we must be held accountable to the same thing. This is what makes the book called the Bible so important, and it's bigger than religion because it has the laws greater than the laws of America, the statutes and the judgments. It's a righteous judgment. It's a righteous way of living. There's equity in that book for the children of God. But without it, it says we're dead. Look at 1 Corinthians 6:20. He says, for ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. So we're bought with the price. We need to glorify God in our body. How? How do we do that? If we're going to follow the standards and the ways of the world through their religion and through their laws and their customs, traditions, their holidays, and we ignore everything that is written by God, inspired, let me say it that way. Everything that is written, inspired by God for his people to have within their heritage, we reject that. So how can we glorify God? He said we have to look at the law that endure forever. We also have to have the faith of Jesus, the Son of God, Yeshua HaMashiach, right? Revelations 14:12. Here's the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. That's how we glorify him in our body and in your spirits, which are God's. We have to have the patience of the saints. New Testament, Revelations 14:12. We have to keep the commandments of God. And again, they're telling you, no, we don't have to do that. Zechariah. No. Zephaniah, I believe. Is Zechariah or Zephaniah? 2:1. Gather yourselves together. Yea, gather together, O nation not desired. So who? Who is that talking about? Gather yourselves together. That fits us because we are a people still in the land of our captivity, looking to bring ourselves about as we're running around asking for reparations and, want to build banks and want to have black economics and, but we'll never have anything in the land of our captivity following after our captors. They control us through their law and through their way of life, and we will never get ahead following their lead. So we have to come together. But if we're not willing to speak the same thing and be perfectly joined together under God according to his statutes and his judgments, it's not going to work for you. Deuteronomy 28:1, and this is where faith comes into play. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, the Lord thy God shall set thee on high above all nations of the earth. That's a promise that God made. This is where we're supposed to have faith that God is going to do this thing. As he said, we need to, for the patience of the saints, that we should keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. We need to know that God is going to put us above all the nations on the earth, but we're required to do a thing first. So it's for us to put our pride aside and know what it means to keep the commandments of God, as he has given us this law of life for the heritage that endures forever. He said it's going to make us wise and understanding. And they're going to say, oh, look at these people. They're so great. They're so wise. Who has a law better than theirs? And if we do it, he's going to put us on high. But now faith comes into positional play now, because we're looking at all of the travesty, all of the atrocities around, and it's like, ooh, how are we going to get out of this? We need Malcolm, Martin, Marcus. We need somebody. But God said nobody is going to bring us up out of this. But yet he said we were brought with a price. He said his hand is going to pull us up out of this. Right? Like America is made strong, like Pharaoh was made strong, just so he can bring them down and show that he is God. Jump down to number 45, because Deuteronomy 28:45, because we just saw where he said he's going to put us on top if we keep his commandments. Now we need to have faith to believe and know that that's going to happen. In 45, he talk about the bad thing, Deuteronomy 28:45. He talk about all the bad things that are going to happen to us if we don't listen to his voice and keep the commandments. And this is what we see taking place. And then in 46, he says, these things are going to be a sign upon our seed forever and a wonder. And this is what we're witnessing out in the streets when, we say, oh, if we're God's children, why is all this bad stuff happening? It's because we haven't hearkened to his voice. We're saying we don't need a book to be righteous, and we don't need you. We can just figure this out, on our own. We have gone about to establish our own understandings. So therefore we suffer. Right? He says, because we don't come to him and serve him with the joyfulness and gladness of our heart for the abundance of all things, he said we're going to serve our enemies. And these enemies, he said, he sent them against us to help us turn back to him. You say, well, why would he do that? Because you're hard-headed, because you're rebellious. You want to follow after them? So he positioned them, to rule over you, to oppress you, to oppress us. Until we turn back to him, as he said, if we hearken unto his voice, then he's going to put us over top, of them. But in 48, he says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger, thirst, nakedness, and want of all things. He said, he shall put a yoke of iron upon your neck until he have destroyed thee, y'all. And that's what happened to us. Slavery destroyed us, right? Them coming to this land and conquering it It destroyed the people of this land, who also were Israelites of the northern kingdom. Right? 17, Ecclesiasticus 17 and 11. He says, besides this, he gave them knowledge. Talking about the children of God. He gave us knowledge and the law of life for a heritage. Why do we throw this away? Why do we take this lightly? This is what's wrong with us. We don't know about the law of life that God gave us for the heritage that endure forever. We don't understand the patience of the saints, are those that keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. We don't know how these two things are interlocked, because religion have also destroyed the minds of our people. Amos 9:11. He says, in that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David that has fallen. Who's the tabernacle of David but the children of Israel that were split, broken down, and at war with each other? He says, and close up the breaches thereof. The breach was the split, the war. We were against each other. To this day, we're against each other. It's a sign. It's a wonder. It's something for us to acknowledge, to let us know we are the children of God. We're following within the bad things that he said would happen. In Deuteronomy, these things that they call the curses, these are the bad things that he said would happen and would fall upon our seed forever until we wake up within the land of our captivity and recognize who we are and come back to our heritage. We're not black, y'all. We're the children of Israel, from the kingdom of Israel. And we must make the kingdom of Israel great again. As you all know, we are great people. Kings and queens, you know. We're not Egyptians, although you know the history of the Egyptians, but our civilization is even greater than theirs. We are the chosen people of God. We're not from the seed of Ham. We're from the seed of Shem. I'm talking to you about the God of Shem. That's who we are, right? Our history, our heritage, it has been lost, forgotten, and they've done their best to erase it. Got y'all running around here thinking you're Egyptians. God destroyed the Egyptians, and he said he's going to raise his people up again. The tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof. He says, and I will raise up his ruins. Our ruins. He says, and I will build it as in the days of old. So if it's going to be built as in the days of old, you all, it has nothing to do with all the other nations. This is talking about the children of Israel having went through the split, being at war with each other, but the breach is going to be closed up and they're going to be one. We are going to be one kingdom again. Not Egyptians, but the children of Israel, all 12 tribes. Thankfully, we are of the 12 tribes. We just don't know it, most of us. But we're coming back to it. But the majority of us, the book says, 2/3 are going to reject this notion because you love your oppression. You love this land. You love these laws. You love the ways of the heathen. And you're going to die with the heathen. As he said, if you walk away from this law, this heritage, you die. That's what's written. I just read it. Right? He says, and I will build it up as in the days of old. So you must know this is talking about the reunion of the children of Israel. So when we get down even further, and it starts talking about the Gentiles, don't switch and say, oh, now he's bringing in all the other nations. That wouldn't qualify with the days of old. Gentile is one of them tricky words that usually, right? Usually it's a non-Israelite people, but in this case, it pertains to the Israelites. Gentile is a word that may also apply to Israelites or Israel. That's within the definition of Gentiles. But they've taught you to say, oh no, that's just all the other nations. The Israelites, were never Gentiles. Not true. Usually it applies to a non-Israelite people. Right? All right. So now let's keep going because it's going to be built up as in the days of old. Now we go to Acts 15 and 15 to see how Paul, reintroduced it. And he talks about the Gentiles and they got it in religion. They got it all twisted and said, now Paul was talking about bringing the other people in. Well, that wouldn't align with Amos 9 and 11 to rebuild it as in the days of old. But let's see, Acts 15 and 15. And to this agree the words of the prophet as it is written. So he's talking about Amos 9:11. And in Amos 9:11, he said the ruins were going to be raised up and built as in the days of old. Number 16, he says, after this I will return and will build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up. Right? Now, let's go real quick to Romans 11:1, because we just saw the kingdom has fallen down, but these ruins are going to be built up again. And you have people, when they hear the word Gentile, they're saying now all these other nations are coming in because God, he cast away his people, or he got rid of his people, or, he left his people, and now the other nations can come in off of the back of Jesus. And this stuff is not written. It's made up as far as what they're talking about, because here we just see, we can see in the prophecy, he said in Acts 15 and 15, he said, and to this agree the words of the prophet as it is written. And he starts quoting what was in 9:11, understanding it's going to be as in the days of old. So Romans 11:1, he say, I say then, have God cast away his people? He said, God forbid. For I also am an Israelite and the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. So now let's pick up where we left off. Acts 15 and 16, where he said, the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, he said, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up. Number 17, he says, that the residue of men might seek after the Lord. So the residue of men, who is that? That's talking about the children of Israel as it pertains to the days of old, that the residue of men might seek after the Lord. And all the Gentile, that's where they get tripped up. That's the stumbling block right there. He says, and all the Gentile upon whom my name is called, saith the Lord, who do all those things. All the Gentile is speaking about the northern kingdom. When they had fallen, they went chasing after idols. They went going after the other nations. This is who he's talking about. As we know, Gentile usually, it's a non-Israelite people, but in this case, the Gentile more specifically speaks to the northern kingdom. So these are the ones that's coming back, according to Amos 9:11, that the tabernacle of David can be built up as it was in the days of old. If you bring in the other nations into this off of Acts 15:17, it will not align with what the prophets wrote in Amos 9:11, right? Acts 26 and 22. He says, this is Paul. He says, having therefore obtained help of God, I continue unto this day, witnessing both to small and great, saying none other things than those which the prophets and Moses did say should come. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at what's written. Paul is not speaking out of his own heart. He's not dealing with his own gospel. He's expressing what Moses and the prophets did say should come. So when he talks about the Gentiles, he's not introducing something that Moses and or the prophets had not already talked about. When he talks about the Gentile, he understands that when the tabernacle fell and we're in the ruin, that our people went after other gods and became like the heathen, became Gentile. Usually a non-Israelite people, it says that's who the Gentiles are. But Gentile can be an Israelite, according to the definition. Hebrews 11:1. Because we have to understand what faith is, as God is saying he's going to make the kingdom of Israel great again. As God is saying he's going to put his people back on top again, but we're looking around at all of the degradation and, the disease and the death and, the violence. And we're like, boy, no way, boy. Right? He says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for. Now, you guys heard me break down and or define, what faith is, but I'm going to do it again. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. In this instance, the substance of the thing hoped for would be what God said he's going to put us on top, above all nations. That's the substance of the thing hoped for. Now, we have to remember the requisite is that we have to adhere to his voice. We have to keep the commandments. Once we do that, he says he's going to put us on top. And when we come into the benefit of seeing ourselves come from the bottom back to the top and ruling, this will be the evidence of the thing not seen, because right now we can't see it. But he said he's going to do it. Now we have to have faith and be strong enough to listen to the instruction and not fall to the insult of one man's mind who says, I don't need the book. All this is innate. I could do it this way, and there's more than one way to get to God. No, God has thoroughly written out how we're supposed to reach him. He said, hearken to my voice. Only way you can hearken to his voice is we have to look at what's written. As he said, write it in the book for a time to come, forever and ever. These words were positioned for this day and time as we're in the land of our captivity, that we can wake up and come to understand. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So once we get put back on top and we look and we're like, oh, this really happened. There's the evidence of the thing that's not seen, because right now we're in it and we don't see it. But God said it's going to happen. This is now having the faith of Jesus, knowing that God's word is going to stand and we're going to be over all nations. America is not going to be great again. It's not written. The kingdom of Israel is going to be great again, and we're going to be in it at the forefront, ruling. Right? I know it don't look like it now, but that's the substance of the thing hoped for. And once we get into it, that's going to be the evidence of the thing not seen, as we see ourselves back in rulership, in righteousness. Right? 1 Corinthians 1 Corinthians 1 and number 10. And this is where we close out. 1 Corinthians number 1 and 10. Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Y'all don't get caught up in semantics. Yeshua HaMashiach. For those of you that makes you feel better. Right? That ye all speak the same thing. Right? And that there be no division among you. If we're going to come together, you all, if we're going to have community, common unity, community, we have to understand what's the thing that holds us together. We can't let it be the devices of men. We have to go with the antiquity of what's written. We have to speak the same thing, so we have to analyze what's written. We have to hold ourselves to the law of God more than we hold ourselves to the law of man. And there should be no divisions among you, meaning nobody can bypass the judgment. You can't be a part of our community and sell poison to our people or do things that go against our customs and or traditions. You just can't do it. And for that reason, a number of you don't want to be a part of it because it will not allow you to be corrupt. So you need to stay with your oppressor and deal with all of the corruption that he has before you and that he allows for you to do. Right? He says, and there shall be, and that there be no division among you, but that ye be perfectly joined together. The only way we can be perfectly joined together is we put all the other things out of our mind and we come to accept the law of life that God gave us for the heritage, and we let that be the standard and the thing that guide us in conjunction with the faith of Jesus, the Son of God. As it said in Revelations 14 and 12, the patience of the saints, to keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus Christ. The faith according to the testimony and the prophecy. But this is the thing that we must be perfectly joined together in, not having anything to do with the religion. Throw that religion, in the trash. Let's deal with the heritage that God has given us as a people and come to understand the kingdom of Israel is going to be great again, according to what's written. The substance of a thing hoped for. We're talking about faith, the faith of Jesus, right? That's the substance of the thing hoped for, that the kingdom of Israel will be great again, not America. America has to fall, right? He said that ye be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. Can't get past the judgment, right? 1 Corinthians 7:23. Ye are bought with a price. He says, be not ye the servants of men. So we're bought with a price, but we shouldn't be the servants of men, right? Brethren, let every man wherein he is called, therein abide with God. So we're bought with a price. And with this price, we should turn our attention to what's written, because through slavery, we were destroyed, and through oppression, we were destroyed. And we've gotten away from it. So how else can we find it? But God, he have allowed it to be preserved in a book that we can find it and be reinvigorated. We are bought with a price. He says, be not ye the servants of men. Be not ye the servants of men. We have to come together and understand what it means to serve each other, to serve God according to the laws, the statutes, the judgments that God has given us for the heritage. not the religion. Brethren, let every man wherein he is called, therein abide with God.